So my name is Abel. I am the head coach for the Midwest Thunderbirds youth, so U15, 17, 19. I'm also the current interim head coach at IU. As I noted earlier, God willing, they will hire a real head coach soon, and I can stop saying that. Thankless job, as you all know. So I'm going to talk about game management. And so when I got asked to talk about game management, I said, yeah, I'll talk about game management. That sounds great. And then I talked to the guys here and I said, the hell is game management? It's one of those ambiguous terms that could really mean anything. And the more I thought about it, I said, no, this is actually great. In my real life, in my actual job that allows me to pay for all the money I lose coaching rugby, I'm an attorney, and attorneys love ambiguous words because it means you're going to pay us a lot of money to argue about them. And so I decided I could make game management about whatever I wanted game management to be about. And so I decided that I'm going to really get up and one of my soapbox issues in terms of coaching, and this is all levels, not just youth, and all states, really, not just Wisconsin. And talk about some of the things I see game to game, week to week with coaches. I've watched probably more high school games than anybody in America, and I don't say that lightly. I am at games every night of the week. As a Midwest coach, I bounce around. I make trips every year to Michigan, Chicago, Ohio, everywhere. Like the Midwest tournament, scouting games, watching recruiting, bringing new coaches. It's basically year round. The fall, I'm doing sevens. So I see a lot. And one of the things I see the most is coaches on the sideline yelling at their players. And not yelling things like, awesome job, or great tackle, but yelling things like, get there, ruck, make the tackle. I hate to break it to you, those guys don't hear a damn thing you say. All of you played. Do you remember what your coaches yelled at you on the sidelines during games? Do you remember them saying, get there, right? And it's like, oh, I wasn't gonna ruck, but he's yelling it, so I might as well, right? Like, it's ineffectual. And I used to do it too. I had a real problem with it. And then I started watching myself on video, and it's like, you look like a lunatic. And I can only imagine what parents think. And it doesn't just go to players. I hate to break it to you, none of you have ever successfully yelled at a referee to get him to change his call. Not once, right? If anybody can name the time it happened, I buy you a beer tonight, right? But nobody was ever like, that's the wrong call, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what, you're right, he wasn't offside. I'm just gonna go ahead and give you this one. Doesn't happen, right? Ever, anywhere. And so, it's not necessarily that I have a problem with it or what you're doing. I just think the time of coaches can be spent much more effectively doing other things on game day. Because you need this. Nah, I don't do it.
Okay, that's
Should we take it?
no, I think we're keeping it in here.
That's fine. Easy come, easy go. So, when we're looking at these things, how can we maximize our game management? And by that, I mean game day management in general. So not just opening kickoff to the final whistle. How do you make yourself more effective? And I think the key to this, and a big thing a lot of coaches miss, is on game day, you should not be a coach. You should be a manager, right? It's not a coincidence this guy shows up to coach in a suit, right? He ain't out there on the field like, no, guys, you take a line like this on game day. You need to do your coaching during the week. And then on game day, you're almost there in a more support role, because if we're being honest, coaches don't win games, players do, right? If you don't have the horses, it's going to be a tough day for you. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Everybody finds a bigger, badder dog out there at some point. But if you're having to coach on game day, it means two things. One, you didn't do your job during the week. And two, it's too late for you anyways. Right? If you're having to explain to somebody like, no, this is how you scrum, and it's 10 minutes before kickoff, and that kid's about to go play tight end, he's going to get his ass kicked for 60 minutes. Right? And there's really nothing you can do about it. And I get it. Sometimes guys mysteriously don't show up on game day, and you're forced to adjust. It's not necessarily your fault as a coach, the work that you've done during the week. But that being said, there's nothing you can do about it at that point. But if you're focusing your role on game day to be less coach and more manager, it becomes easier to put those fires out as they pop up. And they will pop up, right? I coached IU this fall. They're a top 10 team. They're a very good program. We had a game where I was literally on the way to the field. I get a call from my team captain saying, "Hey, we forgot the jerseys." Hey, Joe's not here. We're getting ready to go play University of Illinois for 45 minutes for kickoff. He's like, "Yeah, I sent somebody back to Bloomington to get the jerseys." Get jerseys. Like the one thing you'd think they wouldn't forget, right? So stuff like this happens. But when you see your game day role as manager as opposed to coach, you become conditioned to, okay, I'm here to guide the ship more so than I am to actually steer the ship. And so, how do we do that? It starts day one. Okay? It doesn't start on game day. It has to be almost a holistic approach, if that makes sense. You need to start setting goals, setting training sessions, and making sure that everything you do with your team, from the preseason through hopefully championship game, is all kind of rotating around a central thesis, if you want to put it that way, right? And if you do your work during the week, then game day is going to be the easiest day of the week for you. So how do you set your season up? You kind of got a plot, of course. So I'm a big, anybody ever heard strategy versus tactics? Okay. Strategy is your big picture plan, right? What are we? What do we do? For me, it needs to be snappy. What's your attack strategy? It should be a sentence. Right? One sentence, quick in and out, put your buzzwords, and you're off. Right? Tactics are how we accomplish that strategy. Right? What are our guidelines? What are non-negotiables? What are the things we always do? I have one non-negotiable with attack on every team I ever coach, and that is you will work on the ground, you will get 12-6, and you'll put the ball in a pocket. Every time. It is there. Why? Because I want that ball clean. Because it makes everybody's life easier. It makes your scrum half's life easier. It makes rucking easier. We played it in college this fall, and the referee after the match came up and said, "Thank you for you guys doing that work on the ground. It kept rucks very clean because the ball never got buried, and I had to blow the whistle less." And if you ever ask a referee, in an ideal world, they'll go 80 minutes without ever blowing the whistle once. Right? They don't come to the game like, "I got to hand out at least 9 penalties today." They have 2 yellows, maybe a red. There's no quota for them. They want a clean, snappy game because it's easier for them. And so that to me is it's a non-negotiable. It's happening. We're doing this, period. That's a tactic that we use to accomplish our strategy. And the big thing with strategy is I should be able to go up to any player on your team, look them in the eye, and say, "Hey, what's your attack strategy?" And they should be able to tell me what it is. If they can't, then they don't really know what they're supposed to be doing out there. Because if they don't understand the big picture things your team is trying to accomplish, then how can they go out there and execute, right? They're a chicken running around with their head cut off. And especially at the youth level, where you can keep these strategies very simple and very basic, you're gonna give them goals and expectations that become easy, and we'll get to this in a minute, that become easy to measure over the course of the season. Right? I'm a former history teacher. I always love this saying, right? Like Robert E. Lee, Civil War, was a master tactician. You need a hill, he'll go get your hill, right? Grant though had a strategy. He won the war. His strategy is what you need to win wars. And a rugby game is a war. It's great to take a hill, but you want to win the war. Right? So, when should we do this strategy? This needs to be handled in the preseason. Get together with other coaches, administrators. If there's a parent you think needs to be involved, I involve team captains and team leaders. I think when you get buy-in from the leadership of your team on what your strategy should be, it becomes easier to enforce that on the other guys because you don't need to be the hammer that gets it done. So, no, we play like this, right? It becomes more of a team concept, right? You're getting their input. You don't always have to listen to them. You know, I coach IU, they're 21, they're idiots. Sorry, anybody here is 21, but you're an idiot. But it's still good to at least incorporate the feedback you're going to get. And every once in a while, they'll busting clocks, right? Twice a day. So it's good to give them ownership in what your team is going to do. And there's various things I always think you should consider. And this list is by far, it's not exhaustive. But look at your first step, right? What age level are you coaching? I used to run a middle school program at the Royal Irish down in Indy. That high school team was playing for nationals every year. They should not be doing the same strategy that the 5th and 6th grade team I am coaching. does. Because, not just because they're not as good, but these guys are like 11, and these guys are 18 and 19 years old. Look at your skill level. Is this a brand new program that's first every year, where everybody's new and never played before? Right? Because you're really going to have to adjust your expectations if that's the case. If you're coaching a D1 college team, and you know what you're up against, and you're like, shit, I gotta go play Lincoln with them both. Like, you need to get above catch pass. Look at your competition. Who are you going against? And what are your team goals? Is your goal to win a championship? Or is your goal to just get through the season? Or, hey, we're all about individual development. All right? The point is, there's lots of factors that need to go in a decision, and you should talk about all of them and consider all of them. And you're never going to find the perfect thing like, right? We just spent an hour and a half, putting back door lights and crafting this perfect strategy. It's never going to be there. But you need to have some idea of exactly what it is, big picture, that you want to do. After you have that, that's when you come up with your tactics. I like 4 to 6. I think anything more than that becomes unwieldy. I generally try to do 5. Nice round number. Once you come up with this, I do a strategy for attack, a strategy for defense, a strategy for set piece. I come up with 5 tactics for each one. What are we going to work on? What do we need to do to execute these strategies? And the easier your tactics are to measure objectively, the more effective they're going to be. Because I can go into a game, and I'll get to this in a minute, but I can go into a game, and I can say, hey, we have a tactic that says this, make one-on-one tackles. And I can just count, here's the number of one-on-one tackles we made, here's the number of one-on-one tackles we missed. That's an easy step to track. I don't know the tracking. I can get a parent to do that, right? How many times one of our guys get put on his ass with a stiff arm? Put a check next to their name, right? And then at the end of the day, I'll be like, hey, look, Wyatt, man, this dude did you dirty 3 times. And that's it. And that goes to the team report, and everybody sees it, right? And you have to feel bad for Wyatt, but don't miss 3 times. And this is where you can get some synergy. So like I said, I used to run a middle school team, and I would talk to the high schools we fed into and say, well, what do you call this, right? And now, we're not doing the same thing, but some of the terminology I can keep the same so that when they come out of my program and go into other programs, they show up day one as a freshman, say at the high school, and go, yeah, I know what that means. Yeah, I know what that means. Yeah, I know what that means. Right? And they're going to have to do it at a higher level now they're in high school. But the fact that they walk in day one and you don't have to teach them an entirely new vocabulary is a massive advantage. So getting that synergy, from grade 2 through 12 can be a big advantage. And so once we have our tactics, we can kind of move. So this is what I did at IU. I left the set piece ones off because I didn't write them. I hired a set piece coach because scrubbing sucks. I don't want to teach it. So we had a defensive strategy, right? Pressure attackers and possession to create turnovers. That's it. We're going to play a pressure game. Everything is up fast. Every time a ball comes out, everybody's up 2 hard steps. Every time. What are our tactics? We're going to protect the corners. Right? That's what I call the area around the ruck. We're going to target attackers. So we've identified who we think is going to be first set of hands prior to the ball coming out, and somebody has marked that person. We're going to pressure as a unit, so stay in line. We're going to win one-on-one contact, so make our tackles. And our first man there is going to contest. We want to put pressure on the ball and force the team to try to move quick. That's it. It's our tactics. In attack, we use tempo and off-ball movement to play a fast-paced wide game. Ball moves 5 by 5. You guys know what I mean when I say 5 by 5. So we want to go all the way to this 5-meter line on the sideline, and the ball's going to go all the way across this way until it's that 5-meter line. It's going all the way back. So it's essentially a catchy way of saying I want to use the width of the field. We don't really play positions. If you read my lecture on forwards earlier, I hate positions. 9s I like because they're just unique units. Everyone else should know them. If I overcharge. And then we use first receiver, strike lines, and fill lines as kind of our attack lines. We work on the ground, I mentioned that earlier, and then we clear and cover. These are our non-negotiables. The last 2. Ground work, clear and cover, every time. And anytime we don't do that, it's being trapped. So this is how we set it up. And what we're going to do is we're going to use our training sessions during the week to install this so that we don't have to do it on game day. We're going to set these tactics, and then everything we're going to do is going to revolve around our tactics. So everything in training ties into one of these things. Because what we're trying to do in creating a big strategy and creating tactics is we're identifying, all right, here's the things we're going to get good at. Because, like, let's be honest, like, you guys could run like a 5-hour practice because there's like 5 hours worth of shaping if these 17-year-olds. But you don't have that. You have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of minutes. So you need to focus those in a way where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. So rather than being like, all right, we got to hit this, like, we got to make sure we cover 22s, and we got to make sure we do this. I coached IU all fall. We never once worked on a kickoff. We never once worked on a 22. We never was receiving kickoffs. We were going to that stuff. Right? We took our tactics. Like, we're going to work on these. Everything we're going to do, and what we'll end up doing is stacking. I call it stacking strengths. So we're going to get good at this, and we're going to stack it, and we're going to build it, and we're going to build our strengths so that we become really good at this narrow list of things. And they give us the options to do a lot because they're broad things, and they give the players options, but we're not trying to hit everything, right? You're like the guy at the buffet who's like, oh, chicken, ooh, roast beef, ooh, pot roast, right? That's not going to happen, right? Pick the 2 or 3 things and work towards those, and scaffold your tactics week over week. And you can use your games, your game day, to measure your progress. So how does this look? I structure practice. We practice 2 days a week. Tuesdays is we call it collision day. Thursday is skill day. So on Tuesdays, so just for attack, because I also don't like talking about defense. On Tuesdays, we started really easy. First Tuesday, we're going to work on carrying the ball in contact. We're going to add in the groundwork, and we're going to implement our expectations on clear and cover. Right? Clear, first guy clears out, second guy comes running. Right? This is all we worked on. Get this right, and then we can start adding elements to it. And so, hey, defenders in this position, what can you do to get them out of it? How do you wrap up hands? Body position. Techniques when you got 2-on-1. Things like that, you start adding to it. Thursdays, we just started with simple catch pass drills. I literally got them about as far apart as I am for you guys right now, put them on their knees and just had to pass the ball. Right? Because I said, look, I coached a lot of you in high school. You were more skilled then than you are now. And I don't know what happened in college, except you probably just drank too much beer. But your skills aren't there, and we need to refresh those. And that's what it became. Because if we want to move the ball 5x5, what skill do we need to have? Passing. So if you can't pass, that ball's never going to move 5x5. And then we use games to put them in scenarios. I'm big on channel touch. For those of you who don't know what channel touch is, you essentially put a narrow channel in the middle, 2 bigger channels out wide, and players in this channel can only come to this channel, the players in this channel can only come to this channel. There's one guy in the middle who can go wherever he wants. You can have 1 extra player in the middle channel, and that's it. And it forces them to get into their groups and start thinking differently because you only have 4 or 5 guys in the channel. So when the ball comes your way, there's no hanging out. How do you guys watch the high school guys play touch? And it's like 14 on 14, and it's just, one guy gets the ball, goes down, he kind of rolls it through, and everybody stands there and watches. There's 7 or 8 guys who never touched the ball once because he's hanging on the wing. I hate it. It's miserable. So put them in games and situations where now they're working on this stuff, right? Where now a prop has to be the first receiver to catch the ball because we're going to play interchangeably. You need to get reps doing that in practice. And so all of our training centers around this. And then as the weeks go on, we scaffold it up. So we start adding extra options on the ground. How many of you guys know what 12-6 is? If I say get 12-6, how many of you know what that means?
Body position on the ground.
Body position on the ground, right? Think of a clock. My hands are at 12 o'clock, my feet are at 6 o'clock, and I am skinny, right? We work ball on a platter. I don't have a ball. But I always tell guys, you should hold the ball like this on the ruck. Because what does scrum halves love to do? Just come pick up a ball, right? You see a lot of guys that put their hand on top of the ball like this. Well, what's the scrum half going to do when he's trying to pick up the ball and your hand's on top of it? Like that. I played with a 9 in college. If you did that, he would step on your hand. Right? And he was your teammate. He would do it. He was better than asshole. All right. We'd start working scenarios. These specific things in ruck. We'd go other options on the ground. I taught shrimping, which I like. Rolls. You ever see the guys who they get tackled, they roll forward, right, to get that extra meters territory like that. And then we start adding in touch games. So we're going to play touch, but instead of you getting tagged and rolling it through, now you have to do your whole groundwork routine in a touch game. We play touch tackle, add extra rugby techniques. So every week, we just start adding new wrinkles to the stuff we already had, and we're stacking our strengths. And how do we know we're ready to add something new? I'm going to get to in a minute. We would use the data we collect in games to say, hey, look, they're doing this really well. We need to add something else to it. Scaffolding our other stuff, our skill stuff. Start making bigger passes. We added offloads. We added games where there's kicking. I love kicking games. It's my favorite thing in the world. I want to do it tomorrow at the combine, but the space doesn't work for it. We start putting in stacks, where now our attackers are stacked 1, 2, 3. Okay? We start implementing these different things where the skills we've already been working on, these 5 things, we just add elements to all of them to make them more advanced. These are the only 5 things we can really do in attack, but they're so broad that when you put them in a game situation, we can really do anything. Do we have plays? No, we don't have plays. But we don't need plays. Because if we can do these 5 things well, we're going to be fine. The ball is moving across the field and everybody can handle. The guys are running strike lines and hitting gaps, and we work on the ground, and there's 2 supporters in every ruck. We're going to score a lot of points. Because even though we can't do anything fancy, we're going to keep the ball long enough that eventually you're going to fuck up on defense and we're going to score. So that leads us to actual game day, the easiest day of the week. So you have to remember, going back to the beginning of this, your job on game day is to be a manager. You do all your coaching during the week. You have it plotted out. We literally at the start of the year plotted out, all right, week 1 we want to be here, 2 here, 3 here, 4 here. Like, here's where we're going to start implementing our scaffolds, assuming it goes to plan. Your game day tactics have been set. Your players know what to do. Your strategy's been set. Your players know what to do. You've been hitting them with the same message week over week, and training session over training session. They know, because they've been consistently told, this is what is expected of us, and this is what we're going to do. And they know how to execute it because you've narrowed your focus, and rather than them having a million things going through their head, they got like 5. And that's what you're going to track as the game goes on. I put this in here, like this is a little pet peeve. It starts pregame. Your pregame warm-up should not be an extra practice session. Do not get them there 2 hours early and run them full like a 2-hour practice. You don't need it, right? They don't need it. Especially if you coach youth players. You guys, some of you aren't young enough, but remember when you were 17, like you could literally just get out of the car and do one of these and then hop on the field and go. Right? Yes, it's important to warm up. It is important to have a proper warm-up, but you don't need 2 hours. Keep it tight, keep it short, and allow them to take ownership of their warm-up. For me, I like to get there 75 minutes early, take in gear, all that other bullshit. 60 minutes. Right? And the first 30, I have them work independently. These guys know what they need to do because you've done your work during the week and set expectations. So players know where they're deficient, they know their work odds. But they also know, all right, like, I need to make sure we get some work in on defending around the contact, stuff like that. They'll go do it. Your job is just to manage it. Don't lead it. Let them lead it. Let your captains lead it. Let them run themselves for 30 minutes, and you just float around and kind of, keep things moving in the general right direction. I don't take over the warm-up until it's 30 minutes to kick off. And even then, I'm not really doing much. I spend the next 10 minutes, hey, backs, go over here, run through your stuff, get your kicking in. Forwards, go over here, get your set piece in. From about the 20 minute to the 5 minute mark is when I come in and do 10 minutes of dynamic warm-up, get it loose, get it moving. The last, the 5 minutes in there, run the field in the first 15. Last 5 minutes, jerseys, team talk, they all like to do their stupid little chants at the goal post. Right? Like every team's got one. Some of you are smiling because you know exactly what your team's is. And that's it, right? We're out. Don't make it a training session. Make it what it should be, which is something to get their minds focused around what they're getting ready to do, which is go play the game. And have them take the ownership so that it starts before the game, not at kickoff. Once it comes to game time, you already know what to do because you have your tactics and you have your measurements. You've created tactics with objective standards that you can measure during a game. And the best part is, sorry, I'm so losing my voice. A lot of them are so easy to track that you probably don't even have to do it yourself. I have parents do it for me. I have one guy who's coached me for years, and this fall at IU, he didn't want to drive the 75 minutes to Bloomington to help me coach. They just wanted to come to every game. And so we'd show up at the game, I'd say, hey, here's their clipboard, like track these 3 things. And he's happy to do it. And it becomes that easy. you can track all your stuff. So, I'll get you in a second. But as you're tracking the data, because that's what you're paying attention to, you can start figuring out the things like, hey, we're not doing this well. So when you get to halftime, it becomes, hey, look, we have this many missed tackles, or we have this many times been able to pick and go off the face of the ruck and get a chunk of territory because we didn't have a guy there to cover the goal. You can still talk to your players during the game, but pick your spots. Yelling at them to get to a ruck is not talking to your players. Asking them a question like, what did you see there, is talking to your players. Asking them a question about your tactics is talking to your players. But let them be the decision makers on the field, because you might be yelling at them like, why didn't you do this? Well, maybe they saw something different that you didn't see because they're out there and you're not. And so just assuming that, hey, why did you do this? Well, this guy was over here. Sometimes they can actually explain the decision they made. That doesn't mean it was the right one, but at least they can explain their point of view. And as long as you're tracking on these narrow tactics, you're going to have it. So what am I looking for in attack? On game day, I'm counting. How many tackles did we have when we didn't work on the ground? And I will literally have a roster, and I will put a check next to their name. Right? Like Zach Marsh, guy on my team, led the team. Love him, great player. Coached him for years, ever since middle school. That dude hated working on the ground. Don't know why. But he had the most time, he just didn't do it. But if you don't work on the ground, get that ball back on a platter, you get a check. How many turnovers did we have because we were slow to the ball? Look, sometimes, like, they just make a great defensive play. Right? You guys all know the guys. They're just awesome over the ball. And you carried into contact the right way, you had on the right footwork, you had your body at the right level, and that dude's just a monster, and he jackled the ball, and it happens. But how many times did we turn it over because we didn't carry a club? Or because we didn't have somebody clear? Or because somebody flew in and cleared it out, and then nobody came and covered it up, and the ball was just sitting there, some, big dumb block, and the team was like, oh, thank you, right, and picked up the ball. Because those turnovers are preventable. Getting beat one-on-one, it happens to everyone. Right? Everybody here has got beat one-on-one, tackle, carrying the ball, it happens. Losing the ball because you didn't execute properly is a mental thing, and that's not excusable. That's inexcusable. What am I tracking on the other guys and 3 through 5 here? How many times did we go 5 by 5? Now, do I expect it every single time? No. We might move the ball halfway across and then realize, holy shit, their whole defense shifted. If we just kick it back right now, we're going to have like a 5-on-2. And we'll just reverse field real fast. And that's the right decision. And I'm going to say, oh, didn't do it, right? Because they made the right decision. But I will track how many times we did it, because it is going to be an indicator of what were we looking for, at least. And it should happen a dozen times where we move across in a couple of phases. I love strike lines. It's an underline. Some of you guys call it punch and Judy. I call it strike lines, fill lines. I think there should be a strike line every time the ball goes wide. Every time. So I track how many times does the ball go wide when we don't run a strike line. Because when you don't run a strike line, what you see is, I call it shitty high school drift, but you want a bunch of high school teams. Ball goes to 10, everybody's kind of doing the thing where they jog at this angle, wait for the ball, and then they get the ball, and that's when they decide to run. It doesn't work, man. Right? But we can track it. Did you do it? Yes. And I'll even try to mark it, like how far we're in the game, so we can go back on film, clip the film, and be like, here. You guys look like idiots. Right? And I can track the phase where accurate occasions. How many times did a forward line up at first receiver? I can count that. Right? That's easy to count. I got an assistant do that. I got an injured player do that. How many times did a wing come in from the blind side and insert between centers? How many times did the wing just line up where both wings are on the same side, hanging out, waiting for the ball? I track that. So I can track all of these things with measurable objectives, where I'm just giving them a number. It's not one of those, oh, I thought you did. We rocked well. Right? Like, what's that mean? I'm going to tell you, hey, you did a good job rocking today. What the fuck is that? Right? And look, it happens. We'll have to do that kind of feedback, and you're going to get asked by players. But when you can actually give them statistics as a team, instead of bringing down individual play, you can say, hey, look, we had this many turnovers. Yeah, we can beat Purdue. Is Casey in here? He's not. We can beat Purdue playing like this. But we're not going to beat Ohio State playing like this. Not this many turnovers. So this is something we can fix. And I can take that data, sit down with it after the game, and say, we're really struggling here. We played Wisconsin, my first game as a coach. Our groundwork was terrible. I mean, awful. And we spent basically the entire Tuesday going back, they did groundwork, and we never had groundwork that bad again. And because we tracked it, because we knew it, because we could show them you had this many possessions where you didn't work on the ground, and it was a lot. Like you played 80-minute game, and there were like 30 tackles. That's almost 1 every 2 minutes. It needs to get fixed, and you can show them the raw data, which is going to be more powerful than just, I didn't think you guys did a good job with groundwork. Right? Show the data, it backs things up, and then when you're working on a training, it puts that mental note in their head, this is something you need to get better at. Especially, as I mentioned earlier, in the preseason, you incorporate your team leaders in the decision making, they're going to feel an extra pressure to essentially make sure everybody else on the team's doing it. So you don't have to come in on Tuesday and be like, your groundwork was fucking terrible. Do this, do this. You don't need to be the hammer. Those guys will do it for you because they're going to implement that expectation across your entire team. Post game, I do match reports for my players. I like them. I have a general rule, wait 24 hours, especially after a loss. Sometimes you lose a game, and you try to get your thoughts on paper, and you can take some notes immediately after. But if you're going to put something out to the team, let that pot simmer, right? And then, like I said earlier, use that data you collect. Some groups use apps for individual stuff. I'm a big fan. I didn't do this one with IU, but I do it on the West team. We use Skillshark, not sponsored. But it's a couple dollars per kid, and it allows you to essentially track stuff over the course of a season. So you can enter an evaluation after every game, and you can kind of track where they're at on certain things, and where they are. You can check it out. They have interesting stuff. It's not for everybody. It costs money, so if you're not going to take the time to do it, don't do it. But something where you're tracking your data for the year, so you can start seeing how you're progressing with your tactics. If you want to give something specific to players, make sure it's more than just you ran the ball well. Have something in there that helps. Like I said, with the groundwork, we track individual players, so I can tell somebody you didn't do this well. All right? So kind of summarize, I know I'm going to end early, but it's a long day, and I figured you guys wouldn't mind getting out of this one a few minutes early. Determine a strategy in the preseason. Select tactics to make that successful. Focus your training on those tactics. Don't go chasing down rabbit holes. Stay focused. And then turn game day into management, not coaching. Because if you're doing that and you're tracking these things, and you're giving players proper feedback, it's all big feedback. All right. Feedback loop system, you guys know, right? It grows itself exponentially. And if you do that, you're going to have an easier time being the manager on game day because your coaching during the week is just going to be more effective, and that makes everything kind of easier and stems from there. That's my email out there. So if you want a copy of this PowerPoint, shoot me an email. I'm happy to share it. None of this stuff is trade secret. Are there any questions? Can I assume that we don't know it?
Well, you have maybe specifically collected data for that.
Depends what I'm collecting. I don't collect everything every game. So I have that list. That's like my season list. But I'll have games where like I'm not worried about 5x5 this week. The only thing I collect every game is groundwork. Because groundwork to me is like, can you get 12 to 6? Requires absolutely no athleticism, right? Like either you can turn around or you can't. You don't have to be athletic to do it. It is all mental, it's all effort. And if you aren't doing it, it's because you just don't give a shit enough to do it. So that's the way I want to track every game because it really goes down to just like, it doesn't matter who the opponent is, it doesn't matter anything. It's just, are you putting the effort in? Are you putting in the mental space to, I need to get the ball back, I need the ball back. The rest of them, I usually like to track about 3 things a game. And so,
You have 3 different people doing it, or you have one person?
depends. If so, groundwork is attack, so something else is defense, like we're tracking missed tackles. Then I get the same guy doing both because he's looking at one when we have the ball, he's looking at the other one on defense. I use injured players for this as well. Because a lot of times, how many of you guys have the injured player who's not playing, he's just sticking around on the sideline, distracting all the subs? Yeah, give him a job. Don't give him the touchdowns job, he's gonna be bad at it. But give him a job. Right? Like, put him to work. Like, hey, we got shit we need to do. Like, track penalties. And even if there's stats I don't care about, if I have injured players, I will make them track something that I don't care about. like the same way I distract my children, right? Like, hey, just do this for me. And I'll make them count something, and then like as soon as they turn around after the game, hand the sheet, I throw it in the trash. I don't care. But make them do something because you're just kind of setting the tone of this stuff's important, right? And it forces them to watch the game and start looking for certain things. And it all kind of, like I said, feeds into each other. Any other questions? That's a good question. I do think we can get to a spot where we're trying to track too much stuff, right?
Yeah, so
Too many stats, and it's almost like paralysis by analysis. So that's what, take your 2 or 3, and especially if, I told you, we had terrible groundwork in the Wisconsin game. We hit it real hard at training that week. Played Ohio State the next week. I made sure to track that again, because I want to see, we spent all this time on it, was there improvement? Right? Like, are we good there? And if we get to a level with some things where I'm like, oh, we're definitely good on this, then I don't even track it anymore unless I feel like it's starting to slip away from me. Yeah, you don't need to be the guy with like 80 spreadsheets. Our tackle rate inside the 22 on the left hash is this, right? Like, you don't need to be a total mather, just like a small mather.
Sorry,
No, go for it.
on this here. Could you elaborate a little bit on the channel touch? What that looks like?
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's fine. Just making me a liar. So, if this is our field,
Or I can ask you later too. I just,
let's just take a second. So this is our field. There's about a 15-meter channel down the middle.
Yep.
I will put one player in that. He gets to wear a red penny. He can go wherever he wants to go. At IU, it was usually one of the better players on the team who would do it. Sometimes I like to put a big fat forward in there because that's the guy who does the most running, and big fat forward does the most running. And so that's our middle channel. The guy in the red jersey can be in it. One other player can be in it. I usually like about teams of 8 or 9. So we'll put one guy in a red jersey, and I'll say, all right, each team pick 4 players to put on a yellow penny, and 4 players with no penny at all. So say I have team A here attacking this way, team B here attacking this way. Team A will put their 4 yellow penny players here, and their 4 Team B will put their 4 non-penny players here. Team B will have their 4 penny players here, and 4 non-penny players here. These guys have to stay in their channel, which about 30 meters. The red guy can come in and help. But what we've essentially created is basically a 4-on-4 touch game, and a 4-on-4 touch game with the ball moving back and forth. And it forces players to get involved because when you have the big field 9x9, guys can just hide, okay, and hang out, and chill on the sidelines. When it's just a 4-on-4 game, they essentially have to get involved every time that ball comes into their channel because that's what it's set to do. You can play with numbers. Sometimes I'll be like, you get 5 in the yellow penny and 3 not, so that you're always playing, your yellow team, your yellow channel is always playing with a 5-on-3 advantage. And that teaches them how to look for space. But it forces them to be interchangeable because this, your 4 yellow jerseys here might be 4 forwards. Somebody's got to distribute. So it kind of puts them in unique roles and forces them into action regardless. And then you can do all other kinds of fun things. I do superpowers for the guys in red jerseys. So golden gun, freeze ray, push-ups. My favorite one ever that I did was I let them huddle up before the game. And I said, pick the superpower for the guy on your team, like your red jersey. And so they got to decide what the guy's superpower was going to be. And then the superpower that this team picked, I gave to this guy. The superpower that this team picked, I gave to that guy. And it completely fucked them up. So one of them was like, every time this guy touches the ball, the whole team has to do a up-down. And so now it was like a guy on their team made the other team do up-downs. So it was like, they picked like the worst player, thinking it would fuck up the other team. And so they just kept giving the ball to the worst player on their team. So the opposing team had to do up-downs constantly. And about 5 minutes and they were exhausted because they just had him stand behind rucks. They pass him the ball, he'd catch it. The whole team on defense would have to do an up-down. He just immediately passes somebody else and they just go attack. So you can do fun things with it, but the point is to put them in unique situations so that like I said, interchangeability is a big thing for what I like from my teams, and so it keeps them from being especially getting touched. Like, remember the fly at this, someone's getting the ball first on his team. It's the same 3-4 guys running it. Make them be active.
Almost creates utility a little bit.
Yes. I mentioned it earlier, like, if we're up to me, number 9's would wear a number 9 jersey, and everybody else was a blank number 9. Because if you can't do everything, you can't play the game. That's not really what this is about. There you go. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you for your time, guys. I appreciate it. Hopefully you get at least 1 or 2 things and don't think I'm a total idiot. And if you have questions, I'll be here the rest of the day, so feel free to come and ask.